Alright, I'm still at Kennedy Lake, Vancouver Island. Just shy of Ukiel, BC, west coast of Vancouver Island. I'm pretty sure Dr. John Betternagel spent a lot of time around here as well because of the consistency and the high number of sightings of these beings right around here. But anyway, I'm going to read this one more email. I'm going to keep my travels going. I might head up in the mountains here on the way home real quick to get to another little creepy locations, and I'll share some emails and do some videoing as well. I brought the drone, so I might fly up and show you some of these crazy west coast rivers and stuff too, okay? But anyway, listen to this one. I sent this encounter roughly a year ago. It may have got lost in all your other emails. And you know what? It's almost to the point now, it's like a lottery win if I do get it to read an email. There's so many in there, but I'm getting to them. Especially this month, we're doing one every two days, right? After thinking, I remember about 5 years after this encounter when our spring gobbler season came in. I had taken my share with a shotgun, so I thought I'd try my crossbow. It was a beautiful April morning with a slight dew, making travel on foot quiet. I never heard any rooster toms, so I'd call periodically and continue to walking parallel on the mountainside with a beautiful creek about 2,000 feet below me. Finally, around 8:30 to 9, I had a tom break his silence with a raspy hen call. He was very close, so I didn't have an option to get set up well. I started some soft purrs with a tom cluck every 3 minutes. I hadn't seen him, but I knew he was in a small bench to my right. All I needed was for him to crest it. I waited patiently, holding back on the calls, when I heard that familiar peck, 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 peck. I thought my cover was blown. I raised up easily and looked, but he was gone. At the time, I figured he saw me and ran through the laurel brush to make a clean getaway. I figured I blew it, so I started walking towards a clear cut, which was the closest avenue home. When I reached the edge of the said clear cut, I seen a bear moving faster than any bear I'd seen going up a ridge, and finally out of sight. I laughed it off till this past year when I got to thinking about that brown bear leaving so quick. Here's the kicker. We have black bear in Virginia. I should have known. After my first experience, I gave up hunting raccoon at nights. Yet I did build one hell of a pack of bear hounds. That wasn't a black bear I saw. I wish I could afford hypnosis so I could say what it really was. Later that summer, around 10 p.m., when it was fully dark, I was in my house with my wife and 3-year-old son. I heard what sounded like a helicopter in trouble. I quickly called 911 and told the dispatcher what was going on. She could also hear it. But after calling the emergency FAA, there wasn't any choppers or aircraft in my area. I let her go and called my father, who lived 400 yards away, if he had seen any flashing lights in the air. He didn't see the first. I walked out my deck with my 30-06 trying to get some kind of verification through my scope. I couldn't see anything. After I started looking, the noise left suddenly and was out of hearing in 20 seconds. I don't have a clue to what I heard, but I knew it was something hovering over my house. If it's possible and you would like to hear it, I can get a copy through FOIA. I know what I heard. This dispatcher and my father and ex-wife heard it. That's all I remember on that occasion. But I'd like to ask your audience if they ever seen an orb at night and within 2 to 3 days a family member or good family friend passed away. That'd be odd. It's happened several times since I can recall being in 6th grade. I don't understand it. Yet if I see an orb of any kind, you can guarantee a death in the family of a family friend or of a family friend. Something is connected to the orb and death, but I can't figure it out. Steve, thanks for all you do. We gotta learn what is with these beings and the orb's relationship to death. Thanks for taking the time to read my encounters. You may call me by my first name, Bill. Safe travels to you and yours this hunting season. Wow. Well, thanks for that email, Bill. And once I get home, I'll try to dig up your email and see if I can find the past one and get that read out loud too, all right? But I'll tell you what, straight up, man, I don't have a clue about orbs and the connection with death. I haven't a clue. I haven't had anybody email me something like that. But since you asked, I shared it with the public, and maybe people respond and have something similar, some similar things been going on somewhere on the planet. I don't know, man. But it's good to hear you're still out there hunting, right? And I urge everybody else to keep on getting out there and go hunting. Don't let these things destroy your habits or your life, all right? Because you only get one crack at it, and we're all dying anyways, right? But Yeah, I haven't a clue about the orb thing myself. Maybe somebody out there will, and they can share it with everybody through me if they wish. So anyway, what else? Well, maybe I'll get one more going right here, and then I'll get ripping. I got so many. So many. Hi, Steve. I've been wanting to tell my experience for quite some time now, but ridicule is something I don't take well. I have two experiences with these beings that I believe are human. When I was 15, me and a good friend took a week-long trip down a river in northern Florida from Lake Talquin to Ocklacknee State Park on the Ocklacknee River, about 45 miles in a straight line, but more likely 120 because of all the curves and the switchbacks. We made the wrong turn 3 miles from our destination and ended up another 80 miles further south in a crooked river before finding a bridge to walk to find a phone. Oh, that must have sucked. That's a good chunk, man. That must have sucked. But that is another story in itself. My father, being in the Marine Corps, doing 2 tours in Vietnam, brought me up using guns to provide meat for the dinner table and spending countless weeks in the forest hunting deer, hogs, squirrels, and especially my favorite, dove. He had great faith in me at an early age, going up by myself with no worries of getting into trouble, as I always trying to impress him and wanting to be just like him, just like he was, being in stature and self-reliant. I was fortunate to pack a 12-gauge Model 1200 pump at the age of 13 because he was left-handed and open ejecting spent shells. The empty cartridges flew in front of his right eye, throwing his aim off, so he traded me guns. Back to the point. The second night on the trip, we set up camp on a part of the river that every time I was in that area, I got the pins and needles feeling like I was being watched. Just north of Bear Creek. We deer hunted that place several times and always had a dread feeling, uneasy to the point of anxiety welling up. If I read this a little awkwardly, there's no paragraphs. Okay? I'm reading it fine, but just remember that, you guys. Try to give me some paragraphs. It just makes it hard as hell to read these things. As we were setting up the tent, opening up a few beers that we talked my oldest brother into buying us for the trip, a case was supposed to last us a week. Yeah, right. A few joints to burn here and there, you know, teenagers. When darkness hit, we was settled in for the night and trying to see just how much pot smoke it would take to inflate the tent. Along about 1:30, something outside our tent knocked over our food cooler. The beer cooler was inside the tent. Thank goodness, or I darn sure would have come out blasting double-odd buck over our precious beer. My friend said it was hogs doing it, and I said, "Do you hear the hogs grunting and sniffing?" That is when the scare level went through the roof of the tent. For the next 15 or so minutes, not a sound could be heard from us. Frozen stiff, holding my beloved 12-gauge Winchester, I could only think of how many buckshot and slugs I had at my disposal. My friend, also holding his 12-gauge Mossberg, sat looking at me like I was the one to do something. But I was content and hoping this camp intruder would just move on as my blood rushed through my heart at a loud enough I could swear my friend and whatever was outside could hear it. Never in my life I wanted to see daylight so bad. Time dragged by as our camp was being destroyed. Things like our Coleman lanterns hitting the ground and the food cooler being ransacked. Finally, after what seemed like hours, was only mere minutes, all got quiet. We sat looking at each other like whatever the hell it was. Like, what the hell was that? And my friend kept saying it was hogs. Maybe I was stoned a little, but I do know what hogs sound like. We finally emerged out of the tent to find everything strewn about. Thank goodness our meat cooler was in the boat, but all of our snacks, bread, chips, and crackers were missing. Our Coleman stove was thrown 30 or so feet into the brush. I was looking for telltale signs of hog hoofs and rooting, but none was there. I said to my friend, "Now you think it was hogs?" "No answer," he replied. So what do teenagers do? Fire up another doobie and pop the top on another beer. At daybreak, we loaded up the boat and headed downstream to our next overnight stop, Bear Creek. I know deep in my mind and heart what was the intruder, but I decided to leave well enough alone. My friend was terribly hard-headed, and I didn't want a useless argument to spoil a camping trip that had been planned and looked forward for another entire school year. I was moved to get as much info on these beings as possible, and to this day I still search all that I can on the subject. I believe with all my heart these beings are human, and to kill one would be downright murder. Our government needs to come clean with what they know, but that would change their shoved honest history teachings. Yeah, no doubt. and open up a whole can of worms they don't want to open. I watch all your videos and shun all those other so-called research channels that do nothing but use this topic to fill their pocket with money. It's a shame because the truth needs to come out, and what you're doing is heading us in the right direction. I live in northern Kentucky, as far east as north as you can go, 10 minutes from West Virginia and 15 minutes from Ohio. Needless to say, I'll never go to that stretch of woods in the Ocklawahnee River again. Steve, I'll send you another episode of my second encounter with one of these juvenile beings that happens within 30 feet of my home on the hill behind my house. And boy, do they ever stink. Thanks, Steve, for hearing me out. You can use my name because I don't really care what people think of me or their opinion of the subject. They're real, and the world needs to know this, and get ready for it all to come out. Thanks again. Sincerely, James Mills. All right, thanks for that, James. Being in a tent, isn't this funny, that was false security of a piece of cloth tent gives us such a false sense of security in the woods. It's funny how people feel safe in a tent, isn't it? Myself, I hear something outside, I can't get out of that tent fast enough. I grab my gun or knife or whatever have you, and I get out that door as fast as I can because I do not need to be feeling like I'm stuffed in a sock getting beat up or chewed on from something on the outside of it, right? But overall, I sleep like a rock in a tent. I just do. I just go to sleep, pass out, even when I'm in thick grizzly bear country or whatever. It's the same old shit. You know what? If you're gonna go, you're gonna go. But if or when I do hear noises outside my tent, I get out of the tent as fast as I can. The tent's not going to do anything. It's your enemy, right? If it's an attack by anything that's going to be about to go down. But anyway, there you go. There is a couple emails sent from Kennedy Lake, British Columbia. And I'm going to get my butt in gear, charge up some more batteries on the way, and I'm going to go find some more interesting places and good backdrops to share with all you guys so you can see what's up over here in BC. Be safe, everybody. Stand on a stump. River, hopefully the river sound doesn't drown me out too much, but it's pretty cool right here. Lots of bear tracks, a couple wolf tracks, lots of fish, lots of salmon in the river, and eagles and seagulls feeding on the carcasses. And it's a good spot to rattle off another email sent in. And who knows, maybe we'll catch something going behind me in the river back there fishing. You never know, right? Alright, listen to this. Steve, I'd like to tell you how much help you have given. I'm no longer afraid to tell people what happened to me. And for the first time in 21 years, and for the first time in 29 years, I went solo elk hunting over on the Olympic Peninsula about 7 miles south of Forks, Washington. My longtime friend, who is much like yourself, a lifelong fishing and hunting guide, with whom I have been fishing with for many years. So my buddy set me up on his property on the Bogachiel River. The first night, nothing happened. I had a very hard opening day, and there was no elk in the area. So I was going to hunt the next morning. If nothing, I was going to go home and give them a few days to get into the rut. That night I was sleeping in my truck and was awakened at 1 a.m. in the morning with a strange yell right across the river, like he was telling me I'm here. At first I thought it was a dream, went back to sleep. The next morning I hunted a little while and went home. That was Sunday. The next Wednesday, my buddy called me and told me elk are starting to bugle and to get back over there. So I did. The next day, first night, nothing. I hunted the same area all day. There are quite a few elk in the area now. This is where it gets weird. After hunting all day, I was tired, so I went to sleep early. Then about 11 p.m., I was awakened by what I thought was an owl near my truck. It kept me up for about half an hour, then I went back to sleep. About 3 a.m., I was awakened by a tree knock. Very close to me, one single tree knock. Again, I thought I was dreaming, so I hunted a couple more days and I couldn't find a legal bull. So I went back to give my buddy his key for the property, and I asked him if he had ever had anything weird happen when he hunted there, and he said no. I asked him if he believed in Sasquatch. He told me no, but then he said he did find a human-sized footprint about 5 miles in from where I was hunting. I've heard that story happen before. Between where I was camped and the ocean, there is about 10 miles wilderness, so it's very remote. My question to you is, once they know that you know about them, do they play games with you? Also, The more I look into this, I now realize I've been having encounters for over 45 years and have had my sixth sense alerted many times. I've been growled at twice and left areas many times because something wasn't right. Another question I have, is there a reason this has been happening to me? Thanks a million, Steve. Use my stories and name if you wish. Greg D. Turt. Oh, Greg, I see there's attached to the bottom, there's another previous email you wrote. Sorry, man. So let's read this one now. Hey, Steve, I messaged you a few months ago looking for some answers. So now I'll share my story. Back in summer 1991, my buddy and I were making plans for our first bull hunting trip to an area around Bumping Lake on the northeast side of Mount Rainier. We found an elk calving area just loaded with elk and deer and black bear. At that point in my life, I'd been hunting for over 20 years in an area about 15 miles away. As it turned out, my buddy couldn't go because of his job, so I went alone. I went over on a Thursday night and found a great spur road. We made camp. Nothing happened that night. The next day I looked around and got wood for my fire. That night I was sitting around my fire and I heard something about 20 yards away on the other side of the creek pacing back and forth. Then it would stop and I would hear it behind me. At the time I thought it was bears. So the next morning I woke to elk bugling about 100 yards from my camp and off I went. They were herded up with a very large 5x6. I saw them several times. So I followed them in behind a swamp. When I started around the swamp, there was those footsteps I had heard the night before. They seemed to parallel me for about 15 minutes. Then I tracked the elk for a while, then I stopped for a bit, and then all of a sudden I smelled a horrible smell. So strong, it gagged me like it smelled like skunk and rotten flesh. This happened every single day and night also. So on the last day of my hunt, I climbed a steep ridge and I was going to still hunt the whole day. When I reached near the top, I was standing there waiting for light to come. I'd been there for between 5 to 10 minutes when all of a sudden, brush and branches started to break and the most god-awful screams and roars came from about 40 yards above me. It absolutely scared the living shit out of me. I immediately knocked an arrow and began walking back down the trail. When I got about a quarter of the mile away, I turned and started to run. When I got about a quarter mile away, I turned and started to run. When I got another half a mile away, I stopped. That being was still screaming from the same place that I smelled that horrible off to my left. So I believe that Sasquatch was trying to save my life because he was standing near the edge of a 400-foot shale cliff on the same trail screaming right at me. I knew the cliff was there. He didn't know that. So in wrapping this up, they never showed themselves to me and were never aggressive, just curious. There's a lot more to the story. I'll stop here. Thanks, Steve, for all you do. Use my name if you want. Gregory D. Turt. DeTurt, I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly, man. I hate it when I can't pronounce some things. Like that bug. You know that bug? Somebody is sick of it? Sick of whatever it is. I even forget the word right now. Some people were surprised they didn't know what that insect was down south, but to be honest, I didn't grow up with them in my neighborhood. They're not up here in BC. Never heard of them, don't know anything about them, so that's probably why I hadn't heard of them before. But anyway, one thing I was wondering about that, a lot of people I know have been paced. Obviously, we've read from a shit pile of people that have been paced, and sometimes I wonder if somebody had a massive set on them, meaning a massive set of balls on them, I wonder what would happen if, one of those things were pacing you, and you actually stopped and made sounds to mimic it and laughed at it and told it to go F itself. I wonder what would happen. And also, when people hear that nasty ass roar scream, sometimes I wonder if somebody actually had a big enough set, if they actually screamed back at it and said, "You," ramming up your ass and carried on doing what you were doing. I wonder what would happen. And no, I don't think I have a set big enough to do that. In fact, I know I don't. But anyway, back to your questions. You asked me if once they know you know about them, do they continually harass you? I don't know. I know Scott Carpenter has issues with that, and there's a handful of other people that have issues with that, but I think that goes with a lot of people who have actively, intentionally pursued them. I intentionally pursued them at one time about 6 or 7 years ago, and I got very, very scared, had a scary experience, and I stopped doing it. But I sometimes wonder if just the fact that you know they are there, that your senses are heightened, and that you are on alert and you're hearing for them intentionally, more subconsciously. You can't stop yourself, and maybe that's why. You know what? Maybe once you're aware of these things, you don't miss a sound or a feeling, and that's why you seem to feel that you bump into them a little more often than not. Whereas possibly your average human being who doesn't have a clue about them is just randomly bashing their way through the forest or through the park, hears some of these things, and it goes right over top of their head, right? You never know. But deep down, for me personally, do I think that they make themselves present to you when they know that you know about them? I've had Scots told me they do, other people have told me they do, and from the shit that goes on in my world every single year, I got a pretty funny feeling that just might be the case. I think once they know that you know of them, they don't go do so much to stay out of your way after that, right? So, but anyway, I'll see if I can get enough time to do read another couple emails. I got a couple doozies here that I want to share with you guys, and I don't know if this is the time to do it. I'm running out of light, and I got to get home, and I'm probably about 4 hours late because I got stuck on the wrong side of some road work that shuts down for 3 hours at a time. And that's why I went to go visit that Maggie Lake and Tokart Bay and so on and so forth. But I'll tell you what, I do prefer it out here more than I don't. And, you know, it's funny, Dave Plattis was talking the other night and he's asking me if I'm going by myself when I'm out here, and I think you can probably tell by most of the videos that I share on here, I'm usually by myself. So yeah, I'm by myself about 90% of the time when I'm in BC. Well, I'm in southern BC here, and but I can't wait to get home and look into these two missing fellows in my neighborhood and see if I can help or see if I can find out some more, and I'll do my best to keep everybody talking about it so it doesn't go away. And I sure hope they get returned, or they return, or it's just some kind of a freak 1 in a million accident and they're okay. But we'll see what happens. But anyway, again, thanks for sending that email in. And if any of you want to send an email, you can send it to tellmystoryhowtohunt.com, sharemystoryhowtohunt.com, and I'll get to it. I'll eventually get to it. Be safe.